The certified letter felt heavier than it should. My hands, usually steady from decades of framing houses, trembled as I slit the envelope. The words swam into a cruel, impossible joke. Foreclosure notice. My house, the one I'd built with my own two hands, paid for in cash 10 years ago. It made no sense. I hadn't had a mortgage in a decade. My call to the bank was short. The loan officer was coldly professional. "Mr. Cole, the loan was taken out 6 months ago. The signature is on file." He emailed the document. And there it was. My signature, a flawless forgery. And next to it, the cosigner, my own brother, Mark, my younger brother, the ideas guy. While I was building Cole Construction from a single pickup truck into one of Denver's most respected development firms, Mark was bouncing from one get-rich-quick scheme to the next. Cryptocurrency, exclusive vitamin supplements, a doomed alpaca farm. I'd bailed him out more times than I could count, always with a lecture and a check he promised was the last one. I thought he'd finally turned a corner, working a steady sales job. I'd even let him stay in my guest house for a few months last year to get back on his feet. My thumb hovered over his contact photo, a smirking selfie from a ski trip I'd paid for. I pressed call. He answered on the second ring, chipper. "Davey, what's up, big brother?" The casual tone was a lit fuse. "Mark," I said, my voice dangerously low, "the bank just called me about my house." There was a pause. Not a long one, but just enough for the air to go still. "Oh," he said, the cheerfulness vaporizing, replaced by something hollow and weak. "That. I was going to tell you." "You were going to tell me?" I repeated, the words tasting like acid. "When, Mark? When the bank put the auction sign on my lawn? Or were you going to wait until I was homeless?" "No, it wasn't supposed to be like this." His voice was a pathetic whine now. "It was a sure thing, Davey. A new kind of solar panel tech. The company was going public. I just needed the capital to get in on the ground floor. I was going to pay it all back before the first statement even hit. I swear. A sure thing. It was always a sure thing." I closed my eyes, and for a second I wasn't a 47-year-old man standing in the office of my own company. I was 10, nailing together a treehouse, while 7-year-old Mark sat below, drawing crayon schematics for a better one with an elevator that he'd never, ever build. I could almost hear my father's voice, a ghost from 30 years ago. "You're the big brother, Davey, you look out for him." And I had, always. That sense of duty was a chain I'd wrapped around my own neck. My eyes snapped open. The guest house. He'd stayed with me for 3 months. He had access. My office. My files. "You went through my desk," I said. It wasn't a question. "You found the deed, my social security number." "I had to. There was no other way," he pleaded. "It was for us, Dave. I was going to make us rich. This was our ticket." "Our ticket to what?" I shot back. "Prison?" I took a breath, lowering my voice again. "How much, Mark?" Silence. "How much?" He whispered it. 750,000. The number hung in the air, obscene and impossible. Enough to cripple him for life. Enough to be a rounding error for my company, which I realized was exactly what he'd counted on. "You can cover it, right?" he said, his voice gaining a sliver of desperate hope. "For Cole Construction, that's nothing. We can just make this go away. Please, Dave, I'm your brother." That was the moment the chain broke. The decades of excuses, the bailouts, the endless second chances, they all calcified into a single, cold point of clarity. He didn't see a brother. He saw a safety net. A walking, talking bank account with no withdrawal limits. He hadn't just forged my name. He had leveraged our entire life together as collateral. My own voice, when I finally spoke, was unrecognizable. It was flat, devoid of heat, as if it belonged to a stranger. "You're right, Mark. I'm your brother." I paused, letting him soak in a moment of false relief. "And I'm not giving you another dime. You did this. You will fix it." "But I can't. Davy, please." I hung up. I stared at the foreclosure notice on my desk. The shock was gone. The anger had cooled. In their place, a cold, hard calm settled over me. It felt like pouring concrete, the foundation for a new plan. His name was on the loan, too. He was just as liable as the bank thought I was. And in Denver's cutthroat real estate market, I knew something about auctions. I knew exactly how they worked. My first call wasn't to the bank, but to Sarah Jenkins, my corporate attorney. Her office was just a few blocks from mine, all glass and polished steel. She listened without interruption, her pen making quiet, precise notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she pushed her glasses up her nose. "David, this is clean cut. It's felony mortgage fraud. We get a handwriting expert, we file a police report, and we sue the bank for negligence. We can have this loan voided and the foreclosure proceedings halted by the end of the week. Mark will almost certainly face prison time." I let her words hang in the air. The old me, the dutiful big brother, would have jumped at the chance to make the problem vanish, to sweep the mess under the rug. But that man was gone. "No," I said, my voice flat. "No police report, no lawsuit against the bank." Sarah blinked. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. You want to let them foreclose on your house? Mark is a cosigner, correct? He's equally liable for the full $750,000. "Yes, of course. Legally, the debt is as much his as it is, well, yours, according to this fraudulent document." "Good," I said. "Then we do nothing. We let it proceed." "David, your credit will be destroyed," she warned. "Your personal assets. My personal credit can take a temporary hit. My business is structured through a series of LLCs. It's insulated. This house is the only major asset under my personal name. That's why he targeted it." A grim thought. He knew exactly which pillar to kick out. "I want you to monitor the proceedings. Tell me the instant the auction date is set." Sarah stared at me, a flicker of understanding, and maybe a little alarm, in her eyes. She knew me as a builder, a pragmatist. She was now seeing a demolitions expert. "Okay, David," she said slowly. "I'll draw up a new LLC for you, a blind one, just in case you decide to go shopping." I nodded. "Send me the bill." Leaving her office, I pulled out my phone. It was choked with notifications from Mark. 27 missed calls. A string of increasingly frantic texts. "Tums time. Tums time. I'm sorry, okay? I'm so sorry. Just call me. Nums tums time. The bank called ME. They said I have 30 days. I don't have that kind of money. You're really gonna let them ruin me? After everything?" Then, the one that made my jaw clench. "Nobbers re Seckles, Dad, would be ashamed of you. I'm your family." I didn't block his number. I wanted to see the desperation. I wanted a record of it. Each panicked message was a nail he was hammering into his own coffin. He thought Dad would be ashamed of me? No. Dad would be ashamed of him for turning a lifetime of brotherly protection into a weapon. My father's words echoed again. Asterisk, you look out for him. For the first time, I felt I was looking out for the man he could be by destroying the leech he had become. The next day, I called the bank's loss mitigation department. I played the part of the defeated homeowner perfectly. I was quiet, resigned. I didn't argue. I didn't threaten legal action. I simply said I couldn't cover the loan. My brother, he got me into something. I don't have the liquidity to fix it. The agent on the other end, likely used to screaming and pleading, softened her tone. "I understand, Mr. Cole. We'll proceed with the notice of default. The property will be scheduled for public auction." "Just tell me when," I said, and hung up. The official notice arrived a week later. It was posted on my front door, a bright orange sticker screaming my failure to the world. I peeled it off, not with shame, but with the cold satisfaction of a hunter checking his trap. The auction date was set for 6 weeks out. The 6 weeks that followed were a masterclass in compartmentalization. By day, I was David Cole, CEO. I reviewed blueprints, negotiated material costs, and walked job sites, the rumble of heavy machinery, a familiar comfort. My company didn't miss a beat. Sarah had finalized the paperwork for Ironclad Holdings LLC, an anonymous entity with a P.O. box address and enough operating capital to buy a city block. By night, I went home to a house that was legally, silently, slipping through my fingers. Mark's texts were a constant, buzzing commentary on his descent. The pleas turned to threats. "You're destroying our family." Mom would be rolling in her grave. Then came the attempts at negotiation. "Okay, just give me half. $375K, I can work with that. I'll pay you back, I swear." Followed by pure vitriolic rage. "You were always jealous. You have everything, and you can't stand to see me get a leg up. You're a monster." I read each one and archived it. They were data points charting the trajectory of a falling man. I canceled my weekly landscaping service. The perfect lawn I'd always maintained grew shaggy and uneven. The prize-winning rose bushes my late wife Clara had planted by the porch became tangled and wild. I let a gutter clog, allowing a dark, ugly stain to snake down the white brick facade. To any prospective buyer driving by, the house screamed of a homeowner in distress, of hidden problems and deferred maintenance. It looked like a money pit. To me, it was a stage, perfectly set. He finally ambushed me outside my office one afternoon. He looked terrible. Gaunt, eyes bloodshot, his suit rumpled. "Davy," he croaked, blocking my path. "You can't do this. Please. They're gonna garnish my wages for the rest of my life. My kids." "Your kids?" I cut him off, my voice level. "You thought about them when you were forging my signature on a $750,000 loan?" He flinched as if I'd slapped him. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake. "No, Mark," I said, stepping around him without breaking stride. "It was a choice. You chose this. Live with it." The night before the auction, I drove by my own home one last time. The garish public auction sign was staked into the dying lawn like a tombstone. My phone buzzed. A new text from Mark. "I have nothing left." I looked at the dark windows of the house I built, the house I was about to lose. I felt a pang, not of regret, but of profound, chilling resolve. The foundation was poured. Tomorrow I would start framing. The morning of the auction was cold and unnaturally bright. I stood across the street from the county courthouse, a ghost at my own funeral. The crowd on the steps was a familiar menagerie. A half-dozen seasoned flippers in worn-out jackets, their faces hard and calculating. A young, hopeful couple clutching coffee cups and a printout, destined to be disappointed. And the auctioneer, a man with a booming voice and a bored expression. I saw Sarah near the back of the group, dressed in a severe charcoal suit, a folder for Ironclad Holdings LLC tucked under her arm. We made no eye contact. We were strangers. Then I saw him. Mark stumbled through the crowd, his face a pale, blotchy mess. He looked like he hadn't slept in a month. He scanned the faces, his eyes darting around frantically. He was looking for me. He was looking for a savior. Our eyes met across the asphalt river of the street. His shoulders slumped in a wave of what looked like pathetic relief. He thought I was here to fix it, to bid, to make the debt disappear in a grand, brotherly gesture. He gave a weak, pleading little nod. I turned my head slowly, deliberately, and stared at the courthouse clock, dismissing him completely. I felt his hope curdle from across the distance. The auctioneer began. Lot number 1, 1284 Juniper Lane, a 4-bedroom, 3-bath single-family residence. Opening bid on the debt is $350,000. Silence. The flippers exchanged glances. I knew what they were thinking. They'd all driven by. They'd seen the dying lawn, the stained brick, the general air of neglect. They were factoring in a new roof, landscaping, unknown interior issues. They were smelling risk. "Do I have $350?" the auctioneer barked. One of the flippers, a guy with a grizzled beard, raised a finger. $350. "I have $350, looking for $360. The young couple looked at each other, their faces falling. They were already out. Another flipper jumped in. $360. $370. The first one shot back. They went back and forth, tossing out $10,000 increments like they were trading baseball cards. It was a low-energy affair. My neglect had worked perfectly. They were fighting over the scraps of a property they believed was deeply troubled. Mark was wringing his hands, his face a mask of terror as he watched the price inch up. Each bid another nail in his financial coffin. The bidding stalled at $400,000. $400,000 going once, the auctioneer called, his voice echoing slightly in the crisp air. Going twice. This was the moment. As planned, Sarah stepped forward, her voice clear and devoid of emotion. $410,000. It wasn't a huge jump. It was a statement. It was a professional, no-nonsense bid from a corporate entity that had done its due diligence and knew exactly what it was buying. The grizzled flipper looked over at Sarah, saw her immaculate suit and the cold confidence in her eyes, and gave a slight shake of his head. He was out. The other guy just shrugged. They were done. $410,000 going once, the auctioneer boomed, a little more energy in his voice now. Going twice. Sold to the representative of Ironclad Holdings, LLC for $410,000. The gavel cracked, and the sound was like a gunshot. It was over. The crowd dispersed, and Sarah walked calmly to the clerk's table to sign the paperwork. I watched Mark. He stood frozen, swaying slightly, the reality crashing down on him. The house was gone. He looked around wildly, then his eyes locked back on me as I started across the street. He met me halfway, grabbing my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Davy, who was that? Ironclad Holdings? Who are they? Some vulture fund?" His voice was a ragged whisper. "They only paid $410. The loan was for $750. The bank, they're going to come after me for the rest, aren't they? The deficiency, it's $340,000. He'd done the math. I'll give him that. "They'll garnish my wages forever, Davy," he choked out, tears finally streaming down his face. "My kids. I'll have nothing. You have to help me. Find out who they are. We can offer to buy it from them. We can fix this." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up to his face. I savored the moment, the last flickering ember of his belief that I was his safety net. "We?" I said, my voice as cold as the marble courthouse steps. "There is no we, Mark. There's just you and the $340,000 you still owe the bank." His face contorted in confusion. "What are you talking about? Whoever this company is." "It's not a who," I said, pulling my arm from his grasp. "It's a what? It's an LLC, a limited liability company." I paused, letting the words hang between us. My limited liability company. The blood drained from his face. He looked like he'd been struck by lightning. The tears stopped. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The frantic hope in his eyes was replaced by a dawning, bottomless horror. He finally understood. I hadn't come to save him. I had come to bury him. "I told you I wasn't giving you another dime," I said, my voice flat and final. "I didn't. I just bought my house back. You, on the other hand, are still a cosigner on a loan for a property that's just been sold. The bank has your signature, Mark. A real one. They'll be in touch." I turned and walked away, not looking back. I didn't need to. I could feel his stare burning into my back. I could feel the weight of a debt that would follow him for the rest of his life. I had looked out for my brother. I had made sure he would finally face a consequence he couldn't run from. The house was mine again. The foundation was secure. And Mark's ruin was complete. I didn't watch Mark crumble in my rearview mirror. I just drove. The city of Denver, my city, felt different. The familiar lines of the skyline, the mountains in the distance, they seemed sharper, etched with a newfound clarity. For the first time in my adult life, the weight of my brother was gone. It wasn't a feeling of joy. It was the stark, clean feeling of an amputation. A diseased limb had been removed to save the body. The phantom pains would come, I knew, but the poison was out. My phone rang 2 hours later. The caller ID was Jennifer, Mark's wife. I let it ring 4 times before answering, taking a slow breath to fortify myself. David? Her voice was thin, stretched taut with panic. Jennifer, I said, my tone even. He just got home. He told me what you did. The accusation hung in the air, thick with disbelief. Is it true? You bought the house? You're letting the bank come after him for the rest? I'm letting the bank collect a debt he willingly signed for, I corrected her, keeping my voice level. It was his signature on the loan, Jen. Not a forgery, like mine was. A sob caught in her throat. But $340,000! David, that's everything. It's our savings, it's the kids, college funds, it's our future. They'll take everything. You can't let this happen. He's your brother. There it was again. The magic word. Azak, brother. The get-out-of-jail-free card he'd played his entire life. He stopped being my brother when he stood in my office, used my trust to gain access to my life's work, and forged my name on a fraudulent loan. I said, the words coming out like chips of ice. He didn't think about his kids then. He thought only about himself. This isn't my doing, Jennifer. This is the bill for his choices finally coming due. Please, she begged, her voice breaking completely. He made a mistake. A terrible one. But don't ruin him. Don't ruin us. I'm begging you. I can't help you, I said. The words were the hardest I'd ever had to say, and the truest. The only person who could have prevented this was Mark. Talk to him. I ended the call before she could reply, my hand clenching the phone so tightly the plastic creaked. The next day, I went back to the house. Sarah had couriered the new keys and preliminary title documents from Ironclad Holdings, LLC. Standing on the porch, I peeled the official auction notice off the front door. It came away with a strip of paint, leaving a scar. Inside, the air was stale. Dust motes danced in the slanted afternoon light. The place felt like a stranger's home, violated and abandoned. I didn't call a cleaning crew. I did it myself. I started in the garden, with the rose bushes Clara had loved. I spent hours pruning the dead branches, pulling the weeds, turning the soil. My hands, accustomed to blueprints and spreadsheets, remembered the feel of the earth. Each clipped branch, each pulled weed was an act of reclamation. I worked until my back ached, and my hands were raw, exercising the last 6 weeks of calculated neglect. I was washing away his stain. 2 days later, Sarah called. It's done, she said, her voice crisp. The bank's legal team moved fast. The deficiency judgment against Mark Cole has been officially recorded with the court. They've already filed for wage garnishment and a lien against his assets. What assets? I asked, knowing the answer. His car, the small stock portfolio he has, and, of course, the house he shares with Jennifer. My jaw tightened. I hadn't considered they would go after the home his children slept in. A flicker of something, pity perhaps, tried to ignite within me, but I smothered it. That was his choice, not mine. The fire he'd set at my door had jumped the fence to his own. That was the nature of fire. That evening, my phone rang again. It was an unfamiliar number, but I knew who it had to be. I was prepared for another barrage from Jennifer, or perhaps even Mark himself, trying a new angle. But the voice on the other end was one I hadn't heard in nearly a year. It was frail, hesitant, and it cut through my concrete resolve like a diamond drill. "David," my mother said, "your brother just called me. He told me you've taken everything from him." My mother's voice, thin and reedy over the phone, was a ghost from a gentler time. "David, he said you took his house, that you're ruining him." I closed my eyes, picturing her in her small condo, the one I'd helped her buy after Dad passed. "Mom," I said, my voice softer than it had been in weeks, "he's not telling you the whole story. He told me he made a mistake. He's your little brother. You're supposed to help him, not destroy him. What would your father think?" That was the question I'd been waiting for, the one Mark had weaponized, and the one I was now ready to answer. Dad would be ashamed, Mom. He'd be ashamed that Mark tried to steal my home, the one I built with my own hands. He forged my name on a loan for $750,000. He didn't make a mistake, he committed a crime. A sharp intake of breath on the other end. He said it was a business deal that went bad. "Ask him to show you the paperwork, Mom. Ask him who signed that loan. It was his signature right next to my forged one. The bank isn't coming after him because I'm cruel. They're coming after him because he's a co-signer on a massive defaulted debt. These are his consequences, not my revenge." Silence. It stretched for a long, painful moment. I wasn't trying to win her over. I was simply stating the facts, laying the concrete of my new reality. I had carried him my entire life because of a deathbed promise to my father. But Dad had never asked me to set myself on fire to keep Mark warm. "I have to go, Mom," she whispered, her voice faltering. She sounded confused, the righteous anger draining away, replaced by a dawning, terrible doubt. She didn't say I was wrong. She didn't defend him again. She just hung up. I set the phone down. The conversation had left a bitter taste in my mouth, but beneath it was something solid, vindicated. I had broken the narrative Mark had been spinning his whole life, the story of the unlucky little brother and the successful, unfeeling older one. I had forced the truth into the light, even in the one place I dreaded most. My victory wasn't in buying back my house for pennies on the dollar. It was in that moment of silence on the phone. It was the sound of a lie finally collapsing under its own weight. "Okay, real talk. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have spent years and a fortune fighting your own brother in court? Or would you have risked it all at the auction like I did? Let me know your honest answer in the comments."